call upon Mr. Mehzad Sahar, sorry. Mr. Mehzad Sahar, Group Head of Information Security, Anglo Corporation, and he will present on OT and IT convergence and cybersecurity challenges. So I will invite Mr. Mehzad Sahar, please come on stage and have a talk. Thanks.
Hello. Thank you for giving me a new name. No, I really enjoy it. So as you know, the title or the subject is a totally new subject. Because till now we were just talking about IT and IT. And I can see also at the backstage, people looks like for some reason they are not taking interest. So I realized that why not then, rather than talking about this cyber security, or it's not working. Something stuck. So let's start a mushaira, right? So we don't need to talk about this very critical subject. So in this poetry, which I took from Munir Niazi, he's talking about what? हमेशा देर कर देता हूं मैं हर काम करने में, जरूरी बात कहनी हो कोई वादा निभाना हो. So how I'm gonna correlate this with such a very, I will say, dry subject? What happened 50 years back, once internet was introduced? Unfortunately, by design, internet was introduced with full insecurity. So by design, internet is insecure. So rather than learning lessons from this technology, where it looks like the technology is always lagging to pay respect to cybersecurity, hamesha der kar deta hu. This is what I'm trying to correlate. That technology is coming first, and then we start thinking about cybersecurity. So let's go and start securing something. So once on the ARPANET, the internet was being introduced, this was never in mind that people who are going to utilize internet, eventually they will start fighting with each other. They will start attacking each other, right? So till now, as of today, we are paying that cost. What? Because by design, as far as internet was insecure, still all companies, vendors, they are making business. And we as a CISO also, keeping ourselves very much engaged. And keeping all this in mind, what happened? Because we could not secure our IT, and now suddenly someone is coming that there is something wrong with OT, operational technology. And not only OT, cybersecurity is an evolving area for cybersecurity perspective. It looks like the hackers, they are changing their guns now. They have discovered the money is not only with banks. Now the money is also with other industry like manufacturing. So this is very scary, where I took this from IBM, where they're saying now, if you look at the top 10 industries in which nowadays hackers are taking interest, banking is number 2. And the number 1 is manufacturing, which is a very bad news. Because why? Because this industry, which is totally relying on IT, and IT itself is not very much secure, and manufacturing is actually relying on operational technology, OT. And OT itself is having a lot of its own challenges. So they have not realized this. And now we are coming up with this type of environment, where you will find not a typical very fancy dashboards. You will find switch gears, PLCs, SCADA networks. All these are Chinese for many of you, but a quite good interest for our engineers, not for IT. And this industry is not relying on IT. They are relying on what? On operational technology. And industry itself is a critical infrastructure. Imagine we are talking about smart grid. energy, utilities, oil and gas, transport, telecom, chemicals. If one of the major critical industry, if it is shut down, you can see a national level crisis because some are involved even to actually fertile our lands. So there are a lot of critical things which are being produced, and God forbidden, if they are going to be interrupted, it can create a national disaster. And with all this, what happened? We have a history. So even though it could be once in a blue moon, this history is full of very, very catastrophic incidents. It started mostly, you must be aware of Stuxnet, where Iran nuclear plant was targeted. But however, the same variant or the same, actually, I will say the malware was utilized later on. It went into wrong hand. It went into public hand. It's being utilized to interrupt a lot of services. One of the example is, imagine, it looks like a movie where someone took the control of New York Dam floodgate. If that gate is going to be open or shut down with the help of a hacker, only God can help us, right? Or can secure us. Think about a hospital, drug infusion pump. If it is hacked, then they can inject a wrong medicine, a wrong timing, and ultimately can even create a human loss. So these type of things are involved, because till now we are only talking about, let's say, financial loss or reputational loss. These type of loss, I don't want to go into detail, but you can see the complete history. Recently, just 2 weeks before, there was a major OT cybersecurity attack against Denmark rail system, where the drivers, they were using a mobile device, and this device was actually guiding them about the maximum speed or the minimum speed for a certain rail track. So imagine if it was in wrong hand. So rather than driving the rail, let's say with the speed of 100 km/h, if you get a wrong information, let's say double speed, ultimately the driver was supposed to hit an accident. And imagine no hardening was there. You know, the typical Gmail and Facebook account was found available on this driver hand. By the way, we, with the blessing of our own, technology, especially Pakistan perspective, I think we are not so exposed, because we still rely on some guard who will flag the, who will actually jhanda hilayega, and then the guard will take action and he will start the train. So sometimes it's blessing not to involve and do digital transformation unless you have a good security. So with this, now we are actually stepping into convergence between IT and OT. This guy having a tie, loving his place at data center, and that guy wearing the helmet, loving his plant. And we are trying to converge both network wire, because if you want to really enjoy the intelligence available on the internet, you'll have to give them access. You'll have to expose your plant so that you can make lot of saving. You can actually get exposure to a lot of learning globally happening across different plants. So this convergence is the need of the time. But what happened? This guy, the typical IT guy, wearing a suit or having a tie, if he goes there, usually he's lost, right? Because the plant environment is different than the typical data center environment. We used to love and live in a fancy place, but here you'll have to show a lot of hard work. You'll have to sweat, by the way, a lot to deal with this type of technology. So that itself is a challenge. So if we just compare technology or the industry, so industry perspective, if it is a bank or telco, confidentiality really matters there. But in case of a OT plant, let's say power or energy or manufacturing, the typical CIA goes into reverse direction. So here the confidentiality, integrity, and availability is the top priority, but their availability, integrity, and last but not the least, confidentiality is the major area to be to pay more attention. because a plant can never ever expect a availability issue, because if the plant is off even for 1 hour, it can introduce a loss of millions of dollars. That is a big difference. Also, if you look at this, this is a typical network architecture, which is totally different from IT, where you will find PLCs, SCADA network, DCS system. I know these are all Chinese, as I said earlier, but these systems, they remain at different layers. We call it Purdue model. So there are different levels. And as far as someone is going to join level 3 or level and above, they are going to expose themselves on the internet, and the number of threats, they increase accordingly, and you'll have to put control accordingly. So if I compare in summary, what is the major difference between IT and OT? So in IT is mostly for enterprise, but OT itself is the industry. IT is dynamic, high traffic, but in OT is very, very low traffic is available, but it is very much determined for its mean. Incidents are very frequent in IT, but in OT, even though it could be once in a blue moon, as I said earlier, it can create a big disaster. Data is a king, but in case of OT, the process is the king. No one can go and change the process. I give you an example. In case of IT, the maximum action or the easiest action is, if you don't fix, go and restart the server, right? Here you can't afford a restart. You're talking about a shutdowning a plant, which has a lot of interdependency services. Sometimes even to restart a plant, you need 4 days, because first you will start, let's say, the boiler, then the engine, then the electrical plant, and XYZ, and then eventually you will get the production line working. So there is a big difference. Last thing is, in case of IT, we talk about patches. Security patches should be deployed on timely manner, but in case of OT, you will be surprised that OT is living at the mercy of having patches which are, like, say, 10 years old, 20 years old. So that's why that is very, very scary, because if someone is determined, then he can create easily a big incident. Now, in order to solve this, similar to IT, there is a concept of industrial control system CERT. These are available, and similar to IT, you will find different OEM like ABB, Yokogawa. These type of OEM, they are releasing their vulnerabilities, but not necessary. The people will dare to immediately patch the same way they patch their IT system. And that's why somewhere they remain vulnerable. These are the history or the latest trends which are talking about all applicable risks across different industry. I have selected chemical, electrical, manufacturing, and you can see even the type of risk are different than IT. For example, one of the risks is loss of view. What does it mean? So imagine if a plant engineer is sitting in front of a big command and control center, and suddenly he's not able to see what is the pressure of his turbine. If you are going to make him blind, you don't know the next step is kind of explosion, God forbid, or what else. So this type of risks are applicable, which can be made with the help of cybersecurity attacks by all the cyber criminals. And one should be very, very careful to put control to discourage or actually contain this type of risk. So there is a kind of misconception during the life cycle of plant. People believe we are living in an area where there's something called air gap. So no matter we have these vulnerabilities, but they are not directly connected with the internet. But the problem is, indirectly, the plant guys might be using internet, having their endpoints exposed to internet, might be victim of phishing attack, and then after being compromised, taking something from their USB, which is already compromised because of his laptop, and then inserting that compromised USB inside a PLC or inside a DCS system can ultimately compromise. So that kind of misconception is gone. People believe, there is a kind of firewall which will protect. So that mentality is gone. This is all old age or subjective things. The OEM believe that they are the master. No one should touch this holy, plant, and they can do whatever they want. But now escorted sessions are required. Remember, in case of Iranian nuclear power plant attack, the maintenance engineers was found guilty to introduce the malware because he was not properly escorted by their plant team. So never leave the OEM alone. Always you'll have to actually show your interest and guard them accordingly. So if we are living in Industry 4, where Industry 4 perspective you want to follow, the number one applicable risk is cyber security, which you can never leave. And as I said in the beginning of this meeting, insecure by design products. So even these big names, I will again not repeat their name, all OEM, they never thought about this dilemma that one day they'll have to work on cybersecurity because they were living in an illusion of assuming that no one will take interest. And now indirectly, directly, as far as you are exposed, all these threats are applicable to their big names, and they are spending a lot of R&D to protect them. Eventually, by the way, it is a good business for them also. Thanks to our local regulators, NEPRA. So in the OT industry, they are the first as a regulator who has introduced a kind of OT IT cybersecurity framework. These are all the requirements. We will also discuss during the panel discussion. But I'm happy, at least regulator perspective, in addition to State Bank of Pakistan, PTA, now we have a third regulator, which is not talking about only IT, but not OT cybersecurity perspective. They are paying attention, and this is need of the time. As I said, we are talking about national level infrastructure security, which is not only limiting to banking industry or telco industry, that we all need to realize. And if you want to implement in a systematic way a control, the idea is similar to ISO 27001. In OT, there is a standard called 62443. It's a very systematic framework. And similar to ISO 27001, you can start certifying your OT plants accordingly in a systematic way, rather than taking a panic call to start where you don't know where to start. Okay. Now, last slide. Is there any way where we can certify or we can tell our organization where it is a combination of OT and IT areas? So there is a kind of maturity model we call C2M2. This is called Cybersecurity Capability Maturity Model. It is the only model which is available to certify you for IT plus OT. Okay, so that is very much applicable. So eventually you can go and say, guys, I have achieved MIL 2 level. So that will actually give a lot of satisfaction to top management that you are not exposed to this type of attacks. And finally, what will happen? So you start your journey with ISO 27001 to certify your IT assets. Then you also start IE 62443 to certify your OT assets. And eventually, if you want to know whether you have really achieved a quite good maturity level, then use this C2M2. It is the only framework globally available to give you this much of satisfaction. And then you can actually follow your path in a more strategic way. This is the summary of my whole presentation, that OT, if you want to work, it is quite similar to IT, where you'll have to introduce the governance structure. You'll have to develop OT-related policy. Small example, a password policy could be a 2-minute job in case you're gonna write for IT. But I remember once I was writing a password policy for a OT, we took more than 9-10 hours. Why? Because all those things which you imagine while talking about security control, not necessarily applicable due to a lot of limitations. So you have to introduce a new governance mechanism, new OT policies. Second thing is and this is what we are doing, you'll have to introduce a penetration testing service to test your OT plants. I can give you assurance, a lot of OEM comes, they do next, and eventually they introduce a lot of vulnerabilities. So unless you have your own in-house resources, no one can go and challenge them properly. So that is also very much required. OT SOC, this is a new idea. So in addition to IT SOC, it is the need of the time that you combine, you consolidate your IT feed with the OT feed, and eventually you should have the bigger SOC, right? And which will tell you where someone has introduced, let's say, has bypassed the air gap while introducing some link towards internet. Immediately there should be a pop-up in your OT SOC that a big threat has been introduced, which is bypassing your air gap. Last but not the least, awareness. This is again dealing with engineers, not with IT people. It is difficult. The plant people who are running the plant for more than 20 years, they are the guru. You'll have to go and tell them, please listen to us. Start listening, start understanding these vulnerabilities. It's a tough job, but you'll have to maintain this the same way, we go and convey our messages while talking with typical IT people. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.